right, the CTO Advisor road trip. This is Greg. I think this is my first official interview on the road trip. So
Oh,
thanks
wow.
for joining.
No pressure, right?
No
Okay.
pressure. Just so you know, the success or failure of my road trip is based on how well this interview goes.
Okay.
So I hope you bought your AI guns with you. Your license plate says big data in your Tesla Model S. And we're going to call this the big data big machine here because we're talking about AI. Conversation sponsored by NetApp, who's sponsoring part of the road trip, so I appreciate that. So first off, why are we having this conversation in the Tesla?
A lot of the conversations we have in the industry are about hypothetical AI, right? I think the vision of having these kind of robo butler service our cocktails and our drinks and taking care of our garbage and everything. In a Tesla, it's real. And it's really interesting. Back in 2019, Elon Musk and his team did an autonomy day. And as part of that autonomy day, they walk through what the actual AI and the machine learning process looks like in a Tesla. And I was totally blown away, Keith. Talk about making AI real. So if you think about Tesla and the hundreds of thousands, I think it's over 1 million now, of Tesla cars on the road, they call that the fleet. And they're constantly gathering intelligence from that fleet, pulling it into their machine learning pipeline, making inferences, pushing it back into the car in what they call shadow mode.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like challenging itself on predictions it's making. The driver doesn't even know it. The car's not doing anything. It's just testing the assumptions it's making about how you're driving, how other drivers are driving, learning from that, putting that back through their pipeline and their machine learning workflow, and pushing that back in the form of updates to the cars. So it's actually this like amazing depth of pulling in very targeted information from the fleet, learning from that, pushing that back out, so I can do things like autonomous driving, summon my car to come pick me up from a parking lot. All the cool features and the vision that Tesla has been around robo taxis and the idea that completely driverless pick you up, take you from point A to point B. That requires a lot of learning, a lot of data. Now, the one interesting thing, you would think that, wow, they got all these fleets are pulling in all this data, but they don't actually do it that way. They can tag the types of information they're looking for. For example, how do cars merge into your lane with you? They can pull just those clips from the fleet, and they can learn just from specific instances of what they're trying to learn. What's the objective in that pipeline? And to me, it's totally fascinating. It makes AI real. And when you think about extending that to healthcare, financial services, we talked about automotive with Tesla, you get a real appreciation of what real AI looks like and where the opportunity is for the enterprise.
I think there's stats going around that 80-90% of enterprise data is never analyzed.
Yep.
And the question is, does it have value? So to the point of the Tesla example of just pulling in the data sets that it needs to make for a better driving experience. With that said, what I think big lessons should the enterprise take from Tesla when it comes about being intelligent about the data that's collected?
It's a very good question. To me, and I think the lesson that Tesla's communicated out, it's not about the amount of data. I mean, you don't need a petabyte of data of a car following a truck to understand how that truck's behaving. What you need is variety and difference of data so that you can get those edge, the weird kind of, the 99.999 thing that might happen, which
Right.
is that car cutting you off at an inconvenient time, or how freeway on-ramps merge in. You don't need like millions of hours of a car following behind another car. You need specific data sets, and I think from a Tesla perspective, they look at this from a variety of data, not depth of data, if that makes sense. And I think that the lesson for the enterprise there is it's about the variety and differentiation of data, not the same data inputs over and over again.
So I see this time and time again, especially in manufacturing practices. I actually will visit a manufacturer later on today, in which we're talking about machine data and the edge and data coming off the edge. If everything is okay, I don't need to know that everything is okay. I need to know the exceptions and what caused the exceptions, and how can I have better predictability about machine failures and outages, etc. Take that data, upload it to the public cloud or to a centralized data processing unit, whether it's in the cloud or in my data center, and then use that analysis and get smart about my data.
And I also think it depends on the industry too. I'll give you it's an edge example, but I think it's a good one. If you think about oil and gas exploration, I know the irony is sitting in an all-electric vehicle talking about oil and gas exploration.
They call themselves energy companies.
Energy, is that what it is? So the challenge there is that they haven't had enough resources in the last decade or even more to do more research and exploration. So they have to go back through and look at the old topography maps that they did and across the oceans and other things to be able to glean intelligence out. That's old data that they may not have used for 10, 20, 30 years, but the data itself is still relevant. And so there's an example there of that intelligence and that data that they can get value out of, even though it hasn't been touched or used for a long period of time. It does save them money because now they don't have to deploy ships and do other things to do the exploration, the geography work that they need to do.
Again, this is all sponsored by NetApp, and we haven't talked about NetApp much. What does this all have to do with? And this is the CTO advisor, so I'm going to be provocative. What does this have to do with a storage company?
Sure. So when we talk about ONTAP AI, obviously, and the work that we're doing with NVIDIA to make these the technology behind the inferences and the machine learning that we're talking about, those processes, those pipelines. I mean, there is the amount of data perspective, but there's how much data can you process and in what window of time. Think about pharmaceutical companies and the identification, the pharmaceutical trials that they can run modeling around, right? That requires vast amounts of data, but it needs to be processed very quickly. So when you think about the opportunity for AI in the enterprise, whether it's pharmaceuticals, whether it's financial services, let's just use the example of risk management or fraud detection, and the speed and the accuracy that the dependence of making those inferences through machine learning is critically important. So it really is about the speed and the depth of the technology in a pre-architected way that you're not reinventing the wheel every time you want to create a data set and or do inferencing with the data set that you have. So this is like incredibly important, and I think one of the values, unique values of that relationship between NetApp and NVIDIA with these turnkey solutions that really can get an organization up and running. But the only qualification I would say is very clearly these organizations need to identify that business value up front and not to kind of going on a science expedition up front. Make sure you've clearly mapped out and identified what your goals or objectives are, and now you've got a turnkey solution to make it real.
So I don't know if that was a softball that you threw to me, but I had an in-depth conversation with the NetApp AI team about these processes and capabilities. It's a CTO advisor, CTO briefing, in which is just a deep, unedited conversation. I'll link that in the comment section below. If you want to learn more about the CTO advisor road trip, you can follow us in our journey, me and Melissa's journey, thectoadvisor.com/road-trip.